I think most of us, deep down, really want to make a positive difference in the world. We see a problem, and our first instinct is to try and help. But what if that instinct, even with the absolute best intentions, isn't quite enough? What if, sometimes, it can actually make things worse? Well, in this explainer, we're going to explore a framework for moving beyond just good intentions to actually doing good, but better. It's a tough question, isn't it? But it's one we absolutely have to ask. Can a project that's meant to help, that's full of goodwill, actually backfire? Can it create even more problems for the very people it's designed to support? The unfortunate and often unspoken answer is yeah, yes, it can. And it happens a lot more than we like to admit. And look, this isn't some rare one off thing. It's a fundamental challenge in trying to do good in the world. So before we can find a better way forward, we have to acknowledge that. Let's start by looking at a pretty common pattern for why so many of these well-intentioned projects just fall short. So when you look at these reasons, they're not just a random list. They're actually like a chain reaction. It often kicks off when an outside solution gets imposed on a community. And when that happens, by its very nature, it silences the local voices, the people who actually know what's going on. Then, the donor's interests, not the community's needs, can start driving the whole agenda. And that leads to ignoring the very real risks people on the ground are facing. And before you know it, a vibrant community of human beings is treated like a project to be managed, which strips away their dignity and their say in their own lives. Okay, but let's be really clear about something. The goal here is absolutely not to discourage anyone from trying to help. This isn't about blaming people for having a good heart. It's about recognizing that good intentions are just the starting line. To be truly effective, to do real, lasting good, we just need a better set of tools for thinking and for acting. So, what are these tools? Well, we're going to explore a really powerful framework. It's made up of three distinct lenses that, when you use them together, can bring some incredible clarity to really complex social problems. Think of them as a new way to see the world we're trying to change. Our first lens is ethics. This is the bedrock, right? And it's so much more than just a vague feeling of what's right and wrong. It's an active commitment to, first and foremost, do no harm. It's about respecting the dignity of every single person and being completely responsible for our actions. You could call it our moral compass. Next up, we have the lens of power. Now, power can be this invisible current that shapes absolutely everything. It decides who gets to call the shots, who controls the money, and whose story even gets told. That's why, in any situation, we have to stop and ask, wait, who actually holds the power here? And our third and final lens is context. See, no problem just floats in space by itself. Every single issue is tangled up in this unique web of culture, politics, history, and economics. If you ignore that context, it's kind of like trying to find your way around New York City with a map of Tokyo. It is a recipe for disaster. All right, so how do these three lenses, ethics, power, and context, actually work in the real world? Let's walk through a very real, very high-stakes case study: the challenge of providing online education for girls in Afghanistan. The problem itself is just tragically clear. The de facto authorities have banned girls from getting a secondary education, period. So on the surface, creating an online school, well, it seems like a perfect modern solution to get around this devastating rule. But let's apply our lenses. We have to start with ethics, and wow, the dilemma is just staggering. Is it actually right to offer an opportunity that, if it's discovered, could lead to severe punishment for a young girl or maybe even her entire family? Who on earth gets to decide what level of risk is acceptable for someone else's child? Now, let's look through the lens of context. An online solution is not as simple as it sounds. When we say inequality in internet access, what that really means is that many of the most marginalized rural families are just automatically left out. Significant security risks aren't some abstract idea. They mean the very real threat of raids, of interrogation, of public shaming. And all of this is happening in a place dealing with widespread trauma, where the fear of punishment is a daily reality that shapes every single decision a family makes. A solution that works perfectly in one place could be actively dangerous here. And finally, and this might be the most crucial piece of the puzzle, we need to map out the power dynamics. In this whole complicated situation, who really gets to decide what happens? This table really breaks it all down in a stark way. Just look at the top two actors, the authorities and the international donors. They both have a high level of power. One group controls the laws and physical access, the other group controls the money. Now, look all the way down at the bottom. The girls themselves, the ones whose entire futures are on the line, They have the absolute lowest level of power in this whole system.
And that's it. That's the crucial point right there. This fundamental imbalance. This is the reality in so many social problems all over the world. The people with the most at stake, the ones most affected by the problem, often have the least power to do anything about it.
Now, seeing the problem laid out like this can feel a bit overwhelming. But it's not meant to be paralyzing. It's actually the opposite. It equips us. It helps us move from simple good intentions to a much more thoughtful, ethical way of acting. And here's a practical tool you can use to do just that. So before you jump in to help in any situation, just run through this checklist and be brutally honest with yourself when you answer. Pay really close attention to question 4. Whose voices are missing? Because honestly, seeking out those missing voices is often the single most important thing you can do to avoid causing that unintended harm we talked about.
Ultimately, this whole thing comes down to a really important shift in our thinking. We need to move away from the simple technical question of can we do this and toward the much deeper, much more important ethical questions. Should we do this? And maybe most critically of all, who gets to decide? That last question, that's where true, meaningful change really begins.